In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to make this needle felted whale hair clip. My name is Charlotte Allen and you've reached my channel, The Felting Alchemist. So the tutorial today is especially for anyone that's just starting out needle felting, so it's really straightforward and it gives you some of those really basic needle felting skills that you need to progress as a needle felting artist. So let's see what you need to make this really sweet needle felted whale. For this tutorial, you're going to need a few different types of wool. You're going to need a core wool, so I've got a Shetland white core wool here. So you probably need around about 6 grams of this. And then you're also going to need a wool bats in the colour of your choice. Now I've gone with blue, a classic blue for a whale, but you can do any colour you want to. I've also got a small pinch of the brown merino roving, and that's going to be for the eyes and the mouth. And finally, I've got a small pinch of pink wool bats, and that's going to be for our whale's cheeks. Tools wise, you're going to need some small embroidery scissors, you're going to need 2 sets of needles, you're going to need a fine twisted needle for finishing off your work, and I've got my needle felting pens that I always like to use here with my 2 needles inside. So in here are 2 fine twisted needles. I've also got 2 medium twisted needles as well, also in a needle felting pen, just because it makes life a lot easier for me and helps me to felt everything down a lot more quickly. And then I've also got a single medium twisted needle, and that's going to help me make the eyes and the mouth for our whale. You're also going to need some kind of hair clip, so I've taken an old broken hair clip that one of the girls had that they don't use anymore, and I've just taken off the backing, so we're going to use this as the clip for our whale. I've also got my 7 needle multi-tool with 7 triangular needles inside, and they are fine in terms of their gauge. And then I've also got my brush mat here, and this is going to be for making the whale's fins. Then finally, I've got some impact glue, but you can use super glue if you want to. And that's just going to be to attach our hair fastening to the back of the whale. So let's get started with the tutorial. So I'm going to start off with a strip of my blue wool bats, and I'm just going to measure this for you. So this strip that I'm using is about 12 inches by 2.5 inches in width. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my blue merino wool bats, and I'm going to hold it in my right hand, and then with my left hand I'm going to start folding it over into a rough ball shape. So I'm going to fold it quite tightly, because the tighter you fold it and roll it, the less felting you're going to have to do later on. So I'm using my thumb on my right hand here to hold everything down into place, and then I'm just twisting it round using my left hand, and these corners here I'm just pushing them in and then folding it over into itself. So we want a kind of, it doesn't need to be too ball shaped because we're going to make it look whale shaped soon. So once you've folded everything down, hold it down into place, take your medium needles and just tack that down so it can't unravel. And as you can hear and potentially see, I'm having to use quite a lot of force to felt this down because I've rolled it so tightly. And that's what we want, because if we folded it really loosely, it would take me ages now to felt everything into place. Use your fingers as a bit of a claw. So you're using your nails to protect your fingers so you don't stab yourself. This is if you're not using felting gloves, finger felting gloves. If you're brand new to needle felting and you've never needle felted before, I would definitely recommend using needle felting gloves, because they'll just save your fingers. And the last thing you want to do is skewer your finger and it'll put you right off needle felting ever again. So if you get a pair of those, they're really cheap. You can pick them up on eBay and Amazon. So what I'm doing is I'm just turning my wool and making sure I'm felting everything down evenly. We don't want to felt it too much, we just want to tack everything down into place at the moment. Get rid of any massive looseness. And I'm just pushing my needle in. Sometimes I go in on an angle, but I always come out in the same direction that I put the needle in on, so I don't break my needles. So as you can see here, if I slow down, I'm going in and out in the same direction, in, out in the same direction, like so. Okay. So now that's all tacked into position, what I want to do now is start shaping it. So I'm going to take the ball and I'm going to put it in my hands, and I'm going to roll it between my hands, and I'm going to taper it off just here, because we want to create this whale-like shape. So we want to have his back fins coming out here, and like on any whale, you've got the bulk at the front and then it all sort of tapers downwards into the fins at the back. So I'm just going to roll it in my hands, and this helps to muddle all the fibres together and help the felting process. And then once I've done that, I'm going to take my fine needles, my fine twisted needles, and again I'm going to start just felting everything down again. And you'll find that everything contracts quite substantially. We want this to be biggish, but we don't want it to be massive, because at the end of the day it's a hair accessory, so we don't want it to be too big, although those JoJo bows are massive, aren't they? So maybe we could get away with a massive whale as a hair accessory. So I'm going to really focus on felting down this back part here and getting this nicely tapered down into kind of almost a point. And this is a really easy, quick make to do. And this is great if you've got daughters or granddaughters, or you're trying to think of things that you can sell that are quick and easy to make. This is a great, quick make to do. And it's also brilliant if you're just new to needle felting, you've never done it before. It's a really easy one to start off with. And you're just using very basic needle felting skills like ball rolling, a bit of shaping, and then using things like the multi-tool to help you get those 2D shapes nice and quickly. So keep rolling your whale. What you don't want to do is just felt down on one side too much, because then you'll end up with a wonky looking whale because you felted one side too much and then the other side won't look even. So keep moving it round as you felt it, so you're getting a relatively even finish all over. And you want it to get to a stage where it's relatively firm. You don't want to have loads of looseness inside. So periodically just pick it up and give it a bit of a roll between your hands. I'm just going to start moving this kind of tail upwards here as well to make him look more whale-like. So all I'm doing is I'm using my thumb and my forefinger, and I'm just pinching and pulling upwards. And then I'm just going to felt that into position. Don't go too deep in with your fine needles. You probably just want to go in about halfway, because we want to shape this gradually. We don't want to go in like really, really hard, all guns blazing, because then you'll felt it too much and it will end up misshapen. Whereas if you do it gradually and take your time, so you're pinching the wool into position and then just very gently felting that into place, you can't go wrong. And I said this on my video yesterday, but wool is almost better than clay, because with clay, you pinch and pull it and then it just stays in that position. And if you're not happy with it, you have to then kind of go back and remold it. Whereas with wool, you can pinch it and pull it into position, and then eventually it will just go back into its original form, unless of course you felt it into place. So it's a great way of just checking to see if something works, if you want to sort of see if a certain shape works. And then if it does, you can felt it into position, and if it doesn't, then just leave it, let it bounce back into its normal form, and then just start again. So as I get to the end, I'm just using my needles a lot more lightly, so not too heavy-handed here, because we don't want to ruin this point, you see. And if we felt it gradually, we'll still get a nice firm felt, but like I said earlier, you're not going in with a lot of impact and misshaping it. So I'm just going to go in on the face, and I'm just going to flatten this face a little bit, ever so slightly. Not too much, we want to keep it relatively round, but I just want to give it a bit of a flatter front so that our eyes and mouth can sit nicely on it. And every now and then just take a look from a distance to make sure everything's looking nice and even. And I can see here that there's some lumpiness and some ugliness here in the wool, so I'm just going to go in with my needles and just felt that and get rid of that. Always try and felt down into the mat as well. What you don't want to do is you don't want to air felt like this, because you're destined to stab yourself. So please try and avoid doing that, because you're going to end up with all sorts of injuries, and it's going to be a big, horrible, injured, bloody mess, which you definitely don't want. I'll definitely put you off needle felting, and it definitely brings a whole new meaning to the term blood, sweat and tears. So try and avoid air felting, and try and always felt downwards onto the mat. So I'm just going to felt down into this part here. So this is going to be the top of my whale, and I'm just going to felt into this little area here to create a bit more shaping between the main body, the main bulk of the body, and his tail. And then again a little bit more just down on the sides as well. So I'm just going to push this upwards, this tail, and once it's pushed upwards, I'm just going to felt into the area where I've created that little divot. And just again felt a bit more around that end part where we're going to eventually have our tail. I'm just going to felt a little bit around here where it's a little bit lumpy as well. Just going in very gently. So let's just have a look at him. Just going to go a little bit more around here. It does sound very much like my children are killing each other. I hope that's not the case. Hopefully they're just joyfully playing with each other and I have nothing to worry about. Okay. Don't know if you can hear them, but it does sound quite fraught. So eventually you want to get to the stage where your whale looks something like this. So he's looking nice and symmetrical and he's got this lovely end part here where we're going to put his fins later on, and we're also going to pop some fins either side here as well. The next thing I want to do is I just want to put a bit of white just on his belly as well, or her belly I should say, just because all whales have it. So I'm just going to tear off some of my Shetland white woolbats here, and I'm just going to place it under my whale. I'm just going to make sure that that's even, and then I'm just going to take my medium needles and I'm going to felt that down into position. I'm going to start in the middle first, just to tack it down, and then in a moment we're going to start shaping it. So what I want to do is these ends here, I'm just going to fold them in over themselves, so like so. And this creates that nice white belly that you see. And I'm kind of going for a, is it Kiwawi? Kiwawi, please tell me how to pronounce it because I never know. Style whale, because that's what my children appear to be into at the moment. And I think it's very on trend still. I think it's been in for quite a while now, but I still see a lot of it around, so that's what I'm going to go for. And I'm going to give this one to my youngest daughter and then she can wear it to school. Although she's a bit of a stickler for rules and she'll probably tell me off and say, "This is not school uniform, mummy." Okay, so this is starting to take shape. So I'm just going to add a bit more white to get this looking a bit more solid in its colour. Still using my fine twisted needles at the moment. And just really gently tacking it down, and then I'm just going to again fold over any loose ends. And you want to get this all quite tightly felted down because it is a hair accessory, so it's going to take a lot of manhandling. So the tighter you get it, the better, because the tighter you get it, the less loose the fibres will become as it's manhandled. And it's a great way of practicing your felting techniques by doing this as well. You can keep stabbing and getting everything nicely integrated in. Always concentrate on the edges. The edges tend to get forgotten sometimes, and that's where you often get that looseness. And I'm going to add another layer and I'll come back to you when it's all been felted down. Okay, so I've felted my whale's tummy into place. So all I need to do now is take my embroidery scissors and I'm just going to trim away any bits of excess wool that are sticking out, just to tidy it up a bit. If you hold your felting to the light and turn it, you can often see where you've got any annoying little strands that just need to be trimmed away. Okay, I think I've got them all. There's a few here I just need to get rid of. Lovely. Okay, so it's looking nice and neat and tidy now. So the next thing we need to do is add the fins. So I'm going to move my whale out the way and I'm going to bring in my brush mat. So I'm going to take some more of my blue merino woolbats and I'm going to place it onto my brush mat. Okay, you want it to be relatively thick, so I'm going to take a fair old bit. So I've got 3 layers here, all sandwiched down on top of each other, and then I'm just going to use my 7 needle multi-tool again. Uh-oh, it's starting to rain, and I'm just going to start felting that down. And effectively you're making one large thick sheet of felt material here. And I'm just going to flip it over and I'm just going to do the same on the other side. So you eventually end up with something that looks a little bit like this. So what we're going to do with this piece of material is we're going to cut our fins out of it. Now you could use a template if you wanted to, so you could make a template from card and use that as a guide to cut around with your embroidery scissors, but for the purposes of ease and speed with this tutorial, I'm going to do it freehand. So what I'm going to do is just start making a rough tail fin shape here. And the same on the other side. And I've left quite a bit at the back because we're going to use this to help us attach it to the whale's body shortly. I'm just going to make a bit more of a deeper divot between the two fins. There we are. So you've got something that looks a little bit like that. So eventually that'll be attached to the back of our whale like so. Okay, so that's the first one. Next, fold your sheet over, okay, and we're going to cut out the side fins now. So it's folded over, and I'm going to cut out almost like a teardrop shape with my embroidery scissors now. All the way around. And then when you get to the end where you've got it folded over, just take your scissors and just cut down the middle. And then you've got two roughly even side fins there. One's a little bit bigger than the other. I might just give that a quick trim. Once you've cut your fins out, bring your brush mat back in. And this time we're going to take a small amount, an almost opaque amount of that wool bats again, that same blue wool bats, and we're going to place it back on top of our fins that we've made. But what we want to do, and we must do, is make sure that the wool that we're adding on top goes over the edges of what we've just cut out, because what we're doing is we're going to lock these into place with additional wool. So I've got my piece of wool on the top, so I'm just going to felt it down using my multi-tool again. And then just pull the wool over onto the other side, like so. So you've got that wool locking everything else into place. Just going to flip it over. Just felt it a bit more. That looks pretty cool. We can always do a bit more felting and shaping in a moment, but that's all locked into position now, so nothing's going to fray or come undone from there. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the side fins. So again, just take your fin, take a piece of wool, place it over the top, felt it down, spin it round, felt those sides in, leave this loose because this is going to help us to attach our side fin in a moment. So leave that loose. What you may find as well, as you turn it over, you'll end up with lots of roughness on one side. So try to tidy it up by felting minimally afterwards, so you don't end up pushing all the wool down through the other side and then the brush mat kind of catches it and makes it all fluffy again. So try and felt it down when you're finishing it off as little as possible. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other fin, and I'll be back with you in a second. So now we've got our fins, what we want to do is just use our fine needles just on the sides and just very gently push the wool. So we're going down on an angle, we're not going sideways, we're going down on an angle, but we're pushing that wool into itself just to create a bit more thickness and also lock it into place a bit more and get rid of any fuzziness. Go quite lightly because we don't want to felt it into the mat. I'm just going to go down that central bit there a bit. And then just flip it over and keep moving it as well, okay? And that stops it from getting stuck to the mat, which is what we don't want. I'm going to do the same thing with the side fins. So that's what you're aiming for with the back fin. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the side fins. So again, I'm just going to push it inwards on an angle, so it's still going into the mat. You can probably hear it going into the mat, the needles. So that's one, and I'll come back to you in a second when I've done the last one. Okay, so the fins are all finished, so the next thing we need to do is attach them to the whale. So I've got my whale here, so I'm going to take my back fin first, and we're going to have it so that it's pointing, so it's going this way rather than upwards in a kind of a vertical. We're going to go downwards on a horizontal. I'm going to take my fingers and I'm just going to pull apart this back end a little bit. So we're pulling it in half almost. Very gently. Just so that we've got a bit of something to anchor this onto our whale with. So I've got this kind of flat area here now. I'm then going to place it just where we made that bump. I'm going to hold the back end in place with my thumb, and then I'm going to very gently, in a downwards motion, felt that top part in, just to lock it down. We don't want to felt inwards that way, because then I'm going to stab myself in the finger, so I'm felting downwards. And then I'm just going to spin him round and do the same thing on the other side. Okay, and once that's locked into place, then you can let go and you can properly felt it down. Okay, so once your tail fin's felted down, we want to do the same thing with the fins on the side, and we're going to place these just above where we put that white belly before. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the tail fin. I'm just going to split it slightly. So we've got this flat edge that we can use to anchor down our fin and use it to felt into. And I'm going to place it about here, so it's about halfway along the body. Try not to felt any of the blue into the white at this stage. Try and keep that free of the blue. I just felt that down. This is quite an easy one to felt down. Once you've anchored one part into place, you can quite quickly let go. And then we're just going to felt in the second side. And you just want to make sure with this side that it's looking as symmetrical as possible to the other side that we've just felted down. So it's worth just checking a little bit before you start felting this one. About there. That looks about right. Just going to hold it there. I'm just going to anchor that down a little bit. Let go, and I'm just felting it downwards into the whale's body. Just make sure you get any loose areas that could easily cause the fin to come off, or if the fin got caught or something like that and it was pulled, you know it's not going to come away. So just take your time with this. Again, don't stab too hard, keep your stabs quite light, but you want to make sure that it's kind of on there, it's not going anywhere. Okay, and then the final thing to do is add his face, or her face I should say. So with this, I'm just going to take my brown merino roving this time. I'm going to split it, and I'm going to make some very thin strips. So I've got this long strip here, and I'm just going to pull this, and then I'm going to pull it again. So I've got two pieces here that are probably about 1 inch in length. I'm just going to roll them between my fingers. So I've got these kind of almost pieces of string, or very thin rope. And what we want to do is position our eyes at the sides of our whale's head. So around about here, I would say, is about right. I'm going to hold this down with my finger, very lightly, with very, very small shallow stabs. I'm just going to tack this down initially, just to make sure it looks okay. And then I'm just going to use my embroidery scissors to cut away the excess. Like so. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So once you've got this tacked into place, then I'm going to take my needle again, and I'm just going to felt it down a bit more deeply. But we don't need to go really deep. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know that I really dislike anything looking really 2D and linear. But for the purposes of this sculpture, we're going to go 2D because it's that kind of kawaii kind of look to it. You want to felt it enough so that it's in and it's not going anywhere, but I'm not going to felt it in loads and loads. Okay, and I've kind of gone for this kind of rainbow shape to look like she's smiling. Okay, and then I'm just going to get another piece of my brown merino roving, and I'm just going to make a little smile for her around about here, I think. So I'm going to hold that in place with my thumb and my forefinger. I'm not going to go really wide with it. And I'm just going to tack it down again. And then I'm just going to trim away any excess. And then once it's tacked down and I'm happy with it, I'm then going to felt it down into place properly. Again, using those really shallow stabbing movements so that you don't push it down too much, so then you end up with it looking again wonky because you've used too much force. So just go in slowly and gradually with this shallow stabbing motion and you can't go wrong. And then I'm just going to make a little smile dimple for her either side. So I'm just going to felt downwards and create a little divot either side of her mouth to make it look like she really is smiling. And finally, and this is completely optional, you can take a little bit of the pink merino, just a small tiny pinch, and we could put them just under her eyes. And again, do some light stabbing motions. And we're going to felt some little pink cheeks for her.
That's good.
Thank you, Poppet. So you don't have to do this. You can just stick with the eyes and the mouth, but I quite like it. I think it gives an extra girly look to her. So that's one. And then I'm just going to go in with the second one. And then this time, I'm just going to make sure that, again, it's in the same position as the first one we just added, so it's looking symmetrical. Very, very nearly finished. Make sure it's looking the same.
Oh, that's good, Mummy.
Thank you, sweetie. Just keep checking and making sure it's looking symmetrical as you felt it down, and that way you can always move it if you need to.
Really good, Mummy.
Okay, and there you go. So she's very nearly almost finished. So the last thing...
A bow.
She could have a bow, couldn't she, sweetie? Okay, so we're nearly there. So the very last thing that you need to do is obviously add a clip. So I'm going to take my clip that we've got. Thank you. And I'm going to position it. Now this is the thing now. I'm going to position it sideways so that she can be clipped in sideways. So I'm going to take my impact glue and I'm just going to put a very, very thin amount just on the back of the clip here. Just making sure I've got it the right way around. Yeah, that's the right way around. Oh, it's going already. I haven't even started squeezing. Okay. So
Very sticky, super glue is.
Yeah, it's very sticky. And I'm just going to place that into the middle of my whale and just hold it down. And you probably want to hold it down for about 10 minutes or so to really make sure that there's contact there and it really gets stuck down in place. So I've held the clip down for about 2 minutes and now the hair clip is complete. So you've got your lovely whale hair clip. So completely unique and bespoke, really simple to make. You could even make ladybirds in the same kind of way as this if you've got some red ball bats. So really straightforward, and I can guarantee you that my daughter is going to be very, very happy with it, aren't you, Mia?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and if you're new to needle felting, I really hope I've inspired you to keep going and keep making felting creations. Please let me know in the comments how you found this tutorial, and I will be back tomorrow with more needle felting hints and tips. So if you enjoyed this video, please like it because it just helps me to make more videos. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye!